We are about 1 week away from the border Gavaskar trophy. India versus Australia, a rivalry that is intense, a rivalry that is a treat to watch. Perhaps one of the top rivalries in world cricket at this point in time. Yes, there is always the Ashes, but India versus Australia border Gavaskar trophy has always been captivating to say the least. In this special 3-part episode that we are going to do about the border Gavaskar trophy, I am going to talk about the history of this tournament. Remember, India and Australia have been playing Test cricket for close to 65 years, but they got a name only in 1996. Border and Gavaskar, two of the most legendary names in their respective countries. The highest run getter when it came to tests. On one smoggy morning of October 1996, unlike the pleasant weather that we now have in Delhi, it was decided that the India versus Australia clash will now be called the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Thus, the first one-off test between these two sides happened in 1996 October. And guess what? Two legendary names and the captain of the Indian cricket team was already a legendary figure in the form of Sachin Tendulkar. In this 3-part episode, I am going to tell you the stats and the history of the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Remember, a total of 15 series have been played between India and Australia ever since 1996. India hold the edge with 9 series wins. Australia have only won 5 with 1 series drawn. The head-to-head is very close. 22 to India, 19 to Australia, 11 draws. In the first part of the special Border Gavaskar Trophy history build-up, I am going to focus on the series of 1996, 1998, 2000, 2001 and 2004. So let us begin the saga of the Border Gavaskar Trophy in 1996. On a dry, cracked and typically sluggish Delhi wicket, Australia chose to bat. But unfortunately, none of their batters managed to make good. However, for India, they had found a new hero in the form of Nayan Mongia. Already he had kept wickets on a tough wicket. He now batted in very tough conditions on a wicket that was becoming incredibly difficult to bat on. Mongia made 152 when none of the other Australian players nor of the Indian players managed a score of 67. Australia seemed down and out with Anil Kumble taking 5 wickets, but Steve Waugh's 66 ensured that Australia would not suffer an innings defeat. India did bat well and they ensured that the lead that they got gave them a 7-wicket win. Thus, Sachin Tendulkar in his first major captaincy assignment had come out trumps against Australia. It would only be the start of something very special indeed. After the 1996 humiliation, Australia came back to India in 1998. This time it was a 3-test series. It was touted as Sachin Tendulkar was a Shane Warne. Two of the biggest names that were there in 90s cricket at that point in time. It was already round 1 was in favor of Sachin Tendulkar. Remember, he was there in the Mumbai team that gave Australia a big walloping. Tendulkar had scored 204, whereas Shane Warne returned with no wickets. But in Chennai, in that cauldron of Chepauk, it was set up for a classic. India versus Australia, and it was Warne versus Tendulkar part 2. Shane Warne got rid of Sachin Tendulkar cheaply for 4. And prior to the match, there is a backstory involving Tendulkar's preparation against Warne. He used the help of former India leg spinner Lakshman Shivaramakrishnan and he told him to bowl round the wicket into the rough. That is how Tendulkar wanted to prepare against Shane Warne. The second innings came and India was staring at a deficit. But Sachin Tendulkar's counter assault, the way how he took on Shane Warne, ensured that the contest would forever be won by Tendulkar against Warne. His 155 set up an epic win for India, and from that point on time, it became Tendulkar's series totally. Mohammad Azharuddin in Kolkata managed to hit 163, and India had clinched the Border Gavaskar trophy for the second consecutive time when Australia suffered an innings and 219-run defeat. It was truly carnage in Kolkata. India managed a total in excess of 600, and Australia never ever recovered. Tendulkar showed that he had dominated the Australians when he hit 177 in Bangalore. But unfortunately, some gritty bowling from Michael Kasparov, who took 5 for 28, and centuries from Mark Waugh and Mark Taylor ensured that India would unfortunately suffer defeat. But the 2-1 series win showed that Sachin Tendulkar had gotten the better of Shane Warne in what was to be the first of many great battles. After 2 bad showings in India, it was turn for them to go to Australia, and here, unfortunately, Tendulkar's men were found wanting. They crashed to a very heavy defeat in Adelaide, and nothing went right for India right from the very beginning of this tour. After the loss in Adelaide, India came to Melbourne and they were boosted when Sachin Tendulkar got to a big century there. But unfortunately, yet again, Tendulkar was the lone warrior, and the rest of the Indian batting could not match up to Australia's pace attack, which was Glenn McGrath, Damien Fleming and Brett Lee. Brett Lee made his debut in that Melbourne test and he impressed with a 5-wicket haul. And it was the start of Australia unearthing a brilliant talent in the form of Brett Lee. India came to Sydney with the series already lost, and Justin Langer only piled on the agony when he smashed 200. However, for India, there would be yet another silver lining, with VVS Lakshman hitting 167 in a lost cause. The exploits of Tendulkar in Melbourne, VVS Lakshman in Sydney, and also the bowling of Venkatesh Prasad, Ajit Agarkar and Javagal Srinath were one of the few positives for India and what would be a very dismal tour for them. It summed up the tour was summed up in a way where Ajit Agarkar was dismissed for 5 consecutive ducks. You really had to feel sorry for India and Ajit Agarkar at that time. 3-0 Australia, and in an emphatic way, they had taken back the Border Gavaskar trophy. However, 2 years later, a major miracle and a shock would be in store for Australia. 2001. The era of Australian dominance had begun. They were already World Cup winners. They had won 15 consecutive tests heading into India. Now, it seemed a mere formality that Australia would conquer the final frontier. Remember, they had not won in India since 1969. And now, this Australian team led by Steve Waugh and his invincible men were really determined. The first step was a massive one. They had beaten India black and blue by 10 wickets in Mumbai. Now, heading into Kolkata, it seemed it was just a mere formality. Steve Waugh made 110 as Australia made 445. Although, India's mood was uplifted with Harbhajan Singh taking a hat-trick and taking 7 wickets. Harbhajan's feat was truly historic. But India were bowled out for 171 and they were staring down the abyss when 2 men came together. They changed the destiny of Indian cricket in a big way. VVS Lakshman and Rahul Dravid. Rahul Dravid was struggling against the Australians prior to the Kolkata knock. VVS Lakshman had already proven that he was a thorn in their flesh. Swapping positions, Lakshman at 3, Dravid at 6. The move turned out to be a masterstroke. We all know VVS Lakshman to be Vangiprabhu Venkatasai Lakshman, right? After Kolkata, he would transform into very special Lakshman. Why? Because Dravid and Lakshman batted for 1.5 days completely, unbroken, not broken by spirit, not broken down by the Australian juggernaut. VVS Lakshman's 281, Rahul Dravid's 180. Australia were totally deflated and the 376 run stand turned the tables on Australia, who now had to fight for survival. Australia could not. Harbhajan Singh Following up a 7-wicket haul took a 6-wicket haul in the second innings. But the unlikely hero was Sachin Tendulkar, 3 wickets. And when the final wicket fell, Australia suffered their first loss after 16 tests. 17 could be no more. Australia's 16-match unbeaten streak came to an end and India had levelled the game in dramatic style. 171 run win, and that is how the miracle of Eden was created in 2001. Following on, India had done the unthinkable, and in this way, Australia were spectacularly denied. Heading into Chennai with the series level 1-1, Australia still fought. Matthew Hayden, a brilliant double century, but Sachin Tendulkar followed it up with 126, Lakshman with yet another 50. But towards the final chase, India needed 155, Harbhajan Singh ending with 16 wickets in that game. It was truly a testament to his brilliance. Lakshman fell, the rest of the top order fell. You still felt, what could Australia do here? But Sameer Dige, who only played 6 tests for India, he played a very important 22, and backed by Harbhajan Singh, India won by 2 wickets, and in a spectacular way. They had reversed a 0-1 scoreline to a 2-1 scoreline. Indeed, this series was the light that was needed for Indian cricket at the end of a long, dark tunnel. The match-fixing allegations the previous year had absolutely shaken the faith of the Indian cricket fan. Now, the miracle of Eden and the Chennai test had ensured that Indian cricket would finally be on their way up. 2001 was a watershed moment when it came to India versus Australia tests, and for one individual, it forever changed his life. Fresh from the wounds of 2001, India were no longer tigers at home, lambs abroad. Under Sourav Ganguly, India were now starting to win away as well, and that was bad news for Australia. The 2003-4 series saw a full-strength Indian team, but Australia were without the services of their 2 geniuses, Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne. Now, this was the best opportunity for India to win a series in Australia for the first time ever. And they got their campaign off to a magnificent start. Sourav Ganguly, truly leading from the front, smashed a sublime 144 at the Gabba, and Zaheer Khan's 5 wickets had actually troubled Australia. But unfortunately, rain had the final say, and you may say that Australia managed to get out of jail because India had managed to dictate terms to Australia on their home turf. That would be the case in Adelaide. Ricky Ponting smashed a brilliant double century, and Australia rigged up 400 runs in one day. The collapse came on day 2 when Anil Kumble took 5 wickets and Australia were bundled out for 556. In response, India were tottering at 85 for 4. But then the miracle of Eden would now be transferred to the miracle of Adelaide. The 2 men who made that possible, VVS Lakshman and Rahul Dravid, joined forces yet again. This time it was Dravid who was the aggressor, and with a 6, he notched up his first century in Australia. It would only get better from that point in time. VVS Lakshman was an able ally, and his 148 combined with Rahul Dravid's 233 rescued India in a big way. The 303-run stand was a testament that Dravid and Lakshman were a very special jodi. Australia could not bowl India out cheaply, and they only managed a lead of 33 runs. That gave India inspiration, and Ajit Agarkar was in sublime form with the ball. 6 for 41, an exhibition of swing and reverse swing bowling, saw him land with his best figures in Test cricket. India needed 230 on a wearing Adelaide wicket on day 5. Australia were genuinely missing Warne, with Stuart MacGill not able to be as effective as he was. Rahul Dravid stepped up and made 72 unbeaten runs, and in a spectacular way ended India's 22-year jinx in Australia, where they won a test match. 1-0 up heading into Boxing Day, you would feel that it was advantage India, right? Virender Sehwag truly demonstrated his brilliance when he hit 195. India were destined for a score of 450-500. But a calamitous collapse of 6 wickets for 16 runs saw India squander the advantage from 350 for 4 all out for 366. Australia seized upon that initiative and Ricky Ponting hit 250 plus. Australia got a big lead and Dravid yet again showed his class, but he did not get support as he was dismissed for 92. And India unfortunately lost the Melbourne Test by 9 wickets to help Australia draw level. Heading into Sydney, both teams had a chance, but India seized the vital initiative and finally the player who was struggling for form came back with a very, very disciplined knock. Sachin Tendulkar's 241, there was no single cover drive in that. Most of his shots were on the onside. Why? The cover drive had led to his downfall in 3 out of the 4 tests prior to that. Now he had cut down on that stroke and he decided to play a very attritional and a game-changing knock for him because it gave Tendulkar the confidence to carry on. 241, India 705 for 7. Anil Kumble spun his magic, 8 wickets. India did not enforce the follow-on though, and that could have eaten up precious time. Dravid, Tendulkar and all scored at a very aggressive rate. Dravid with 91 before he had to retire hurt after a blow from Brett Lee on his ear. But it gave India 4 sessions to bowl Australia out. Unfortunately, they could not do it, and that is why in Steve Waugh's farewell test, Australia held on for a draw, but India kept the Border Gavaskar trophy because they had won it in India before. A 1-1 series draw was a fair reflection of how India had come up. But with Australia missing some big names, it was kind of an opportunity missed for India. In part 2, I will tell you how Australia dominated the next part of the decade of the 21st century, whereas India were in a transition phase. Thank you so much for listening to this video, folks. We'll be back with more Border Gavaskar history on Sports Today. Subscribe and tap that bell icon so that you know when we do these videos.